Greetings everyone, welcome to my sketchbook. Well, the last few videos I've been playing around with the idea of having a porch goose for my sketchbook. And I think it would be kind of interesting to add different outfits or, well, cool stuff for the goose to have. So this is a scrap piece of paper. I have my inkwell. I have an idea. Now I can kind of see a little bit through this paper. And I'm going to make something for our goose friend here. Now, like I said, I can kind of see through this a little bit. I'm going to zoom in on that. Maybe bring this down a little bit. I don't know if you can see through that as well. Okay. Now, let's see what we can find in here. I have different sort of memory when it comes to certain things. I don't remember people's names sometimes. Sometimes I struggle with words that'll just pop into my head. I'll try to remember why that was something for me. It's not the worst thing. And then sometime later on, the gaps will get filled in just a little bit. I don't know if that happens to some of you the same way. It's a little discouraging sometimes. And other times I'll hear a bit of music or I'll have a conversation with somebody. And my recall can be extraordinary. That's kind of interesting. I'll talk about something that maybe would trigger a memory for somebody else too. It'd be like, oh yes, I remember that. That was pretty neat. Memory is funny. I've been fortunate to view things in my life that are hard to forget. Now let's see here. I've made kind of a bonnet, but not really, because I don't really wear such a thing. And I didn't really research this, so that's interesting. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the same piece of paper. And it doesn't matter because I'm going to cut this out, remember? I'm going to move this up just a little bit. Now we have the body of the goose here. I can go, well, let's say right here. Let's go move it over a little bit just in case there was something else that we'd like to add to that. I dip the pen. Now, I'm going to make a shawl, if that's what you could call it. Oh, you know what? Maybe a much bigger bow. I've seen quite a few of these porch geese. Many of them. And I think they're kind of neat. I'm just doing kind of the rough work of it right now. And maybe I'll add some color to it. Well, that's not so bad. Maybe a little bit more detail to be added after. Try to work our way through this idea. The folds of clothes in this material is kind of a fun thing to draw. Okay. Now underneath here you can see a little bit of a wing. I have an idea. It's about placement, actually. I'm trying to figure out a place Okay. Right about here, I think, would be fun. I'll move this up just a little bit if I can. Some of you already know what I'm about to say, that a baby goose isn't a duckling. They're called a gosling. Same last name as, or I should say, the same name as the last name of that actor, Ryan Gosling. Trying to make sure that it seems kind of fuzzy, but not super fuzzy. So because I drew that bonnet, I feel like I've perhaps seen a picture like this before. I should also say I do draw from memory. And it is possible that I have not invented something, but I don't have a reference that I'm using as a guide for what I'm up to. So I'm just playing around inside my head with this. Now, why do I have a ribbon? I don't know. Hmm. I don't know what geese are like when it comes to wearing fun clothes. I somehow doubt that they do. I've seen people dress up dogs and cats. I don't know if geese are part of that sort of thing. Birds are pretty smart, though. And I'm sure that they will learn things for some sort of treat. And they develop personalities. Let's go with the other duckling, but gosling. Arm up, wing up. Perhaps pointing. What kind of a little duck body do we need to have? Well, we know that the feet are, let me move this up a little bit again, are right about here. But since this creature is slightly more forward, it's okay if they're not exactly at that same level, sort of. So let's see what we can do. Just dipping my pen here. Let's see what we can come up with. little webbed feet. Okay. Let's take a moment to just add a little bit of detail to this. Some scratchings. I've seen such creatures in person, not just the porch version of them. I mean the real life geese. And I've seen the Canadian geese as well. They tend to be in pairs, hanging out, readying themselves to fly to a warmer place. Let's see. I kind of wonder about the first time somebody, let's say, drew an animal but gave it human-like features or an outfit just because they thought it would be amusing, or they favor that creature in some way. Was it an Egyptian thing? Is that possible? Perhaps it was Babylonian. There are some who have deities, as they would call them, that would have the heads of animals. And bodies of people. Interesting. So, let's think of something for the front of this goose. And again, like I said, we don't have to worry about let's move this up just a little bit. Maybe try to move the camera a little bit too. Okay. Now, I don't know if you can see the sort of a light, faint outline there. I'm going to move this over just a little bit. Again, thinking of placements. Let's go right about here. That's rough looking. Let's go with another over here. I'm going to perhaps move this up for a moment. It's almost like I made a pizza. Not quite. Let's do the same thing on this side over here. We can try to fix some of this as we go, but I think there's some sort of attachment here. And it helps to control this part. Which makes the buggy almost a convertible. I don't know if the front end of those things really close off. So where do we sit next to the body? Let's kind of back this out just a little bit, because that's the feet. Okay. Like that, maybe. And this would be kind of like the thumb here. So we can add a bit more detail. We can leave those other lines. I believe at one point the chrome on something was referred to as bright work. Now, I could be wrong. It's okay if I am. I'm not researching this at the moment. But it was a big deal to have things that were shiny. It's a plating sort of thing to do to transfer a bit of metal, shiny metal, onto objects. Gold plating, for example, was or still is, a popular way of having something valuable added to the outside, almost like a facade of sorts. So instead of having a solid gold ring or watch, you could plate it with gold, precious metal. So it just has that same appearance. I believe a version of that is set up by nickel or copper. And I think it's through electrolysis. So you would run a current through a bath of sorts. I'm taking a little bit more time at this point. I think real rubber is light in color, so closer to being white, but almost like a chalkier color. So real natural rubber isn't black. Sort of a sappy like material that's taken from a tree and then I think it's vulcanized, which is a temperature thing. Not quite the same as what you do with like metal, where you temper the metal. Let's see. Try to finish this off a little quicker now, because we're 28 minutes into this. I'm leaving sort of like a little flap here. I don't know if buggies like this really exist anymore. A little bit of the hand. Here, I'm going to add a little bit of material, kind of like a support, let's say. For a precious cargo. Okay. I don't know if we need to add color to this or not. And I don't know if we need to add a 3D effect with the wheels kind of in the background. I guess we could very quickly. Let's go set in just a little bit here. Center of the wheel would be roughly there, let's say. We'll do the same thing on this side, but we'll, yes, kind of keep it semi-symmetrical. And then that support would kind of exist over here as well. I mean, it would have to, right? Let's have that quite a bit darker. And the remnants, which no one else will notice but us. That's the wheel. Okay, well, that's that. Let's think of something back here. I'll let this one stay a little more prominent. How about that? Okay. A little bit under the ridge with this. Here. Here. Now, let us just add a little bit of color and be done with it. I think I like this purple. I'm going to streak this in, starting kind of more at the top here. And I'm going to let some handle shade fall upon that. Fall upon. Sure. And then just sort of zigzag the rest of this in. More like streak than zigzag, I suppose. And let's say that this is a fashionable device. Let's go with the same color. And we'll go kind of dark in the folds, and then we'll sort of zigzag again. Okay. Let's try this. Now, by no means does pink have to represent a girl. Often we have. I'm not really sure why that is. I'm sure it's a marketing thing, to be honest with you. Ever hear of something called the pink tax? It's where you have two devices. One might be pink, has the same function as another thing which could be blue or whatever color, but they charge more for it because, well, perhaps it's a cruelty thing. I have no idea. Let's go to this bonnet and this shawl, and let's see if we can quickly color something in with that. See what this looks like. That might be nice. Okay. So for whatever reason, I had this floating around in my head. Now I believe there are a series of nursery rhymes, or maybe it's a singular sort of thing that pertains to a mother goose. That's kind of interesting. Some of those stories exist still, but we tell them in different ways now. Nursery rhymes still exist, but now they've expanded on them. They've given them a new life, I guess. You have movies like Shrek that introduce us to characters that we only kind of knew peripherally. And by peripherally, I mean just sort of out of the corner of your eye almost. You had a gingerbread man who could run really fast, of course, and may not have been as clever as a fox. And for whatever reason, we have these creatures that exist in our rhymes that are meant to tell us a little bit about the world. Kind of like parables of sorts. To be cautious. Let me tell you a secret. If I were to go into the woods and find a house made of candy, I'd be pretty tempted to take a nibble off that house. Except I'm aware enough that candy and sweet whatever sort of things don't really exist outside, so that would probably be covered with ants, and I'm not really a fan of eating ants. It is a food source for people in this world, but not for me. I'm sure I've eaten a lot of bugs in my life while I nap or when I run through the woods with my mouth open, I suppose. So this is a fashionable goose. We're already already at 40 minutes. It's probably going to take me a little bit of time to cut this out. What would I have for the tie down? Should I do the same color? Let's go with a different color. How about a sort of a darker pink? Not quite fuchsia. It's funny the different names that we give things. Violet for a lighter purple. Navy for a darker blue. There's magentas. We have, oh yes, a variety of colors. Wedgwood. I guess you could just make up colors too, but they have to remind you of something you'd think. You know, if you had sunset orange or golden yellow. What color should we have? That little ribbon on that hat. Well, we'll deal with that in a moment. I'm going to bring out my good friend the bunny pen. I'm going to use that same orange that we did for the mama. I'm kind of going around the outside first. Around the outside. Of this bill. I go down here to the feet. Little Ryan here. Ryan's pretty excited. Okay. And I'm going to use that blue, a hint of it here, and a bit more here. And now for the part that is going to be quite difficult. I'll leave that like that for a moment. See if I can cut this out. I'm going to try to do it reasonably fast, make a bit of a mess, but move in such a way to remove large pieces quickly. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut with a bit of detail because I'll have some different things exposed in the picture down below. I have an idea. If I leave a little bit here, I can use shading under the hat. How crafty can that be? Just a little bit. Not so much of a luxury on this side though, but a little bit. Top of the hat. I'm going to leave a little bit of paper there, which will hopefully give us a little bit of strength. Didn't have the same sort of thing to do down here though. All right, let's set that up there for a moment. Let's hurry this one along a little bit. Ooh. Now we'll try to figure out how much paper we're going to have to remove from this. Ooh. In a moment. Okay, well, unfortunately, we're going to make our way into this just a little bit. So I talked about memory a little bit ago there, and I said how songs sometimes will trigger memory. When I said making my way, I was reminded of the theme song of Cheers. That's funny. Some of the other parts of the details I can just sort of ink in. That way I can keep a little bit of strength in the paper that I have here. Let's move that off to one side. That looks funny. Now for this part. Get rid of that larger piece there. Let's go straight across here. And we'll give a little bit of the curve of the wheel there. Same on this side, why not? Okay, let us line up a couple of things here, and we'll back this out just a little bit. Okay, let us start with this buggy. Like that. We can curve cut a little segment of that away. And as I said, if we need to, we can draw detail back in. Which would help us with the placement of our cool features. I can do a slightly more detailed cut of that, I think. Next, I'm going to sort of back bend this a little bit. That way when I lay it down, hopefully it doesn't curl up. I think we're going to need a little bit of detail showing here. So I'm just going to kind of curve cut here. Just a little bit. And maybe I'll as I said, put the detail back in, but I want there to be a bit more. Okay. Final piece. That's not so bad. I don't mind that so much. I could trim a little bit more off of that because I don't think we need that much support for that ribbon. I think there was a time when people had something they called their Sunday best, where Sunday was a day where you didn't work. Sunday was a day of rest. I didn't mean for that to turn into poetry. I just kind of finished it off that way. You know, you'd perhaps gather for a meal, you'd go to church, you would put on your best clothes. I don't know if that really exists the same way. You know, you get home from school and you get out of your school clothes to put on your play clothes. Like, is that even a thing anymore? You know, you didn't want to wreck your outfit. All right, well, I've taken more time with cutting than anything else. Now, if I were so crafty, I would have had my little friend here point more towards future sibling there. Last thing, just to add a little bit of detail, I think. It's going to go here. I could probably do the same throughout it, but I don't know if I need to put in that much more time on this thing. All right, well, it'll bug me if I don't, and that's, you know, nearly an hour of time. Oh, it's almost a burden. I'm doing stuff I didn't want to do, but I can't help it sometimes. I just want to work on something till I feel like it's complete enough that I don't really have to go back to it. Okay. Back bend the paper, back bend the paper. No, yes, no. Again, I'm not going to be happy if I leave that. I think originally the idea was to have it so it can kind of move around a little bit. All right, so please, let's leave that alone. Folks, I think that's going to be it. I mean, of course, I could trim that stuff out, trim the wheels. But I don't know if it's necessary at this juncture.